have an understanding, and we are going to be starting this process of focused analysis of the situation with a technical meeting which will take place in Iran the beginning of April, which I hope will be followed by other technical or political meetings as agreed by both sides.
Let's talk to Negar Mortazavi. She's a journalist with The Independent and host of the Iran podcast. Negar, thanks so much for coming onto the show. What's the significance of this latest development?
Well, I think this is part of the cycle of events that we've seen as part of a bigger impasse of diplomacy between Iran and the U.S. Essentially, what would be or had been working in the past few years was the access that IEA had to Iranian sites as part of the JCPOA, the nuclear agreement. And every step that each side, Iran and the U.S., takes away from commitments under the JCPOA, there will be new concerns. We still don't know. It's not 100% clear what this new report entails and how expanded it is. But I think that at the end of the day, it's the IAEA, the technical nuclear watchdog that's trusted by all parties, that would have to be able to have access. And the impasse in the diplomacy between Tehran and Washington is something that's actually complicating this.
Now, Negar, the U.S. and Iran both appear to want some sort of compromise and to come to the negotiating table, but both sides, of course, have different conditions before actually agreeing to anything. Who do you think is going to make the first move here? Who's going to budge?
Well, that is the million-dollar question right now. What the Iranian side is saying is that they're still in the nuclear deal. They haven't left the JCPOA, although they have reduced their compliance, have been pushing the limit. The United States has left the nuclear deal under President Trump. It's a new administration, but there seems to be this talk of a leverage here in Washington, or at least even within the Biden administration, that maybe all the pressure and sanctions that President Trump put on Iran is actually, it's a smart move to be used as leverage to gain more concessions from the Iranians. That's obviously something that the Iranians don't want to give up. So I think the diplomats, with the role of the Europeans have a very important role here, are trying to figure out a sequence where both sides kind of do this return to full compliance simultaneously.
Now, you know, whenever we talk about Iran and the U.S., we talk about the politicians, we talk about the diplomacy, about talks, etc. But of course, the people most affected are people living in Iran. What's life like for ordinary Iranians at the moment, when you consider that they're the worst affected by COVID-19, along with the continued U.S. sanctions?
Well, exactly. As you pointed, the Iranian economy has been doing pretty bad as a result of both the crippling sanctions. There's also a lot of mismanagement and corruption within the country. And then add to all of that a layer of the pandemic, the worst hit in the entire region. And essentially what the Biden administration has done in the past month or so is a continuation of the maximum pressure by President Trump, the crippling sanctions. And from the viewpoint of an average Iranian on the ground in Iran, nothing has changed with the change of administration in Washington. I think that's something that the Biden administration needs to sort of take into account, the viewpoint of ordinary Iranians, and both sides should start moving fast on this diplomacy, which would eventually have benefits for the Iranian economy and for average Iranian citizens.
And hopefully that will happen soon. Negar Mortazavi, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.